You guys in this video about this emerging phenomenon called breatharianism. You see these people coming out of the woodwork claiming to not eat, claiming that they don't need to eat, don't need to drink water, even in some cases, claiming to not need physical sustenance to survive and thrive. When I first heard about this, my initial reaction was like, are you kidding me? Like, of course we need food, and of course we need water to survive. People die of starvation, people die of thirst all the time. So let's take a look at this. If you take someone with a nutritional deficiency, suppose they have low levels of magnesium or low levels of zinc or low B12 or something like that, and if you take this person and you fast them on nothing but water for 21 days or 30 days or even longer than that, what do you think happens? The deficiency actually goes away completely, and the levels of that particular nutrient that they were deficient in before increases. It doesn't get lower, it doesn't get worse. Even though they're not putting in that nutrient to their bodies, those deficiencies disappear. And this happens all the time. You see this repeatedly in cases of people who have done extended fasts. Why does this happen? It happens because we are already complete. We already have everything in our bodies that we need. We are created in perfect balance, in perfect harmony. And we really don't need to be putting in anything extra. Funny thing happens when you put in excess into your body. You start to feel like you're lacking something. We're born into these societies, we're born into these cultures where we are conditioned to take way more than we need, vastly bigger quantities of food and nutrition than we need. And when we do this, it generates feelings in our body that we are missing something. It generates feelings of lack, and it creates imbalances. And when we take too much nutrition, it actually creates these deficiencies, these imbalances that you see in people all the time with the low B12, the low iron, the low minerals. And also when we take too much food, it alters our epigenetic expression, and it silences, it mutes certain genes that we have, certain parts of our DNA. If you take the average person off the street, like 99% of the genes in their DNA are dormant, and they're not really functioning, they're not turned on. But if you take that same person and you fast them on water for an extended period, or if you get them to do a dry fast, you will see a lot of those genes activate, and this changes their epigenetic expression in a way that certain hidden capabilities, human capabilities, things that we're already programmed at birth to have, these get turned on, they get activated, and some really extraordinary things can happen. When we get our bodies in an optimal state of health, we don't need anything. We don't need to be taking in extra at that point. Once we get our bodies optimally clean, when we get in the process of shedding the toxins and getting those things out of our bodies, we don't need as much food because our bodies become so much more efficient at absorbing things that we put in it. In the same way, they become very efficient at absorbing energies, the subtle forces from our surroundings. A lot of us are under the impression that we get all of our energy from food and from water, but really there are many sources of energy that we are constantly tapped into. Like, the world wouldn't even be here without light. So light, in my opinion, as far as I can tell, is number one. That is like the number one source of energy. And the next would be air. Like, you cannot go very long without air. You can only go a few minutes without air for most people. And then water, you can only go a few days or weeks without water. And then there's food, which you can go the longest without food. Take an average person, just Joe Schmo off of the street, you can go weeks or even months without food. And I find it so interesting that we live in this culture that is so heavily addicted to food and sex. And these are the two things that we can go the longest without. We can survive for such a long period of time without these two things. And you don't see very many people like addicted to sunlight, or addicted to oxygen, or addicted to drinking water. But you see tons of people, you see entire civilizations of people throughout history that are addicted to food and sex, and these are the things that we can go the longest without. It just fascinates me. But my point is that I really do believe that this is possible. As crazy as that might sound to a lot of people, like, we adapt our bodies to some really extreme situations. Like, we humans are so adaptable, it's incredible. We adapt our bodies to all kinds of extremes, like living in the most polluted and toxic environments imaginable. So I think it's totally feasible to adapt our bodies to not need very much physical food, if any. Because the average person can go such a long period of time without food. If you take that person and you detox them and you get them properly nourished, they could go even longer. They could go years without food. And this is what I think we are seeing with these so-called breatharians or pranarians, people who can live off of the subtle energies and not require food as their number one source of nourishment. And you see a lot of these same people who claim to be breatharians, and they will admit to, eating small portions of food every now and then in social situations and things like that. But it's not their number one, it's not their primary source of nourishment. They don't really need it, they don't require it. They see food more as something to be enjoyed, something that is entertaining or exciting, something that gives pleasure, but it's not like a requirement for survival. And this is just making a lot of sense to me. And like on this YouTube channel, I'm very raw food centric. Like, as much as I love the raw food diet, and I definitely advocate the raw food diet, I think it's such a reasonable thing for anyone to do to heal the body. But at the same time, I feel like, for me personally, it's like a transitional tool. It's like a vehicle. It's kind of like a ladder to get to these higher levels of health where you really don't need so much. And to me, that's just a beautiful thing, to not need something, to be able to say that, yeah, that served me at one point, but now I am free of that, and I don't really need that so much in my life anymore. I just find that so beautiful. So I definitely feel a resonance within myself about this lifestyle, that I'm seeing these people just sort of emerging and claiming to live this way, and it's just fascinating to me. And I actually have a friend who just completed Ray Mayor's 10-day breatharian process, and that just piqued my interest even more, and that's sort of the reason why I'm feeling inspired to make this video. And I also see that it is a growing phenomenon. It is something that is increasing, it's gaining momentum in a similar way like raw foods and the Woodstock Fruit Festival. Like, the fruit festival started out with just like 150 people, and now it's like thousands of people from all over the world converging into this fruit festival to celebrate eating raw, natural food. And in the same way, there's the Pranic World Summit, Pranic Healing Summit, and it's starting out with just like a few hundred people, and I suspect that it will grow to the same numbers as something like the Woodstock Fruit Festival. It's very easy to say that, no, this is impossible because you need food or else you starve, and you see starvation happening in countries everywhere. I feel like starvation has just as much to do with emotions and thoughts as it does with the physical food or lack thereof. Fortunately, in a lot of these countries where starvation and a scarcity of food has been installed and created in these cultures, so have certain thought patterns and transgenerational emotional baggage from the traumas and the persecution and the atrocities committed against those people. If you combine those emotional traumas and those thought patterns with the scarcity of food, then you create starvation, then you create death. But if you take a different person who has healed through all of their emotional trauma and all of their negative thought programming from their culture, and you fast them, then they don't starve. They get in tune with higher frequencies of energy, and they feel more nourished and they feel more alive. And this, I think, is the crucial difference between people who are seemingly able to succeed on this breatharian, pranarian lifestyle and people who are starving to death in the world. Just listening to a lot of these so-called breatharians speak on their experiences, they all seem to agree, at least mostly agree, that it's not the fasting that got them to where they are with their health. It's not the act of deliberately not eating that enabled them to achieve such a thing of not requiring food. Instead, it's the emotional healing. It's the emotional honesty that enables them to do this. If someone is completely emotionally honest, then all the hunger, all the feelings of desire, all the feelings of lack just completely vanish. And I've experienced, fleeting moments of this myself, where I just feel so full and my breath is still and I feel perfectly alive and sustained just by my own truth, my own expression of my honest feelings. That is something that makes a lot of sense to me. Truth being the number one source of nourishment. That we can all be nourished by pure truth, honesty, which is really the same thing as love. And I think the reason something like a raw food diet or a vegan diet is so much more nourishing and so healing is because it's more true. It's a lifestyle that is closer to our nature and truer to our essence, and it's not heavy burdened with the deception and the lies of the foods created by heavy industry. So these are just some of my thoughts about this thing that I'm noticing, this phenomenon where people are not eating anymore and feeling totally sustained and loved and just in optimal health. I find it fascinating, and it's definitely a controversial topic with a lot of really charged feelings about it, because people love food and there are people starving. So let me know how you feel about it. Let me know if you agree or disagree or what you think. I love you, and I wish you the highest forms of healing. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Our bodies have an intelligence that is just so infinitely far beyond what our intellects could possibly understand. We are creators. Our bodies create things. We are alchemists, literally. Our bodies can take things from the environment and create something completely different. Our bodies take in amino acids and they create protein. In the same way, your body could take an atom of carbon or something, and your body knows how to take or give electrons, protons, neutrons to that atom and create something completely different, create a completely different element. Our bodies are infinitely intelligent if we just get out of the way, stop inundating our bodies with excess. If we could just take appropriate amounts, then we would naturally gravitate towards needing less and less.